call this Washington County Board of Education called meeting to order. First on the agenda is a class action litigation. I'll let Mr. Boyd, I'll turn it over to him and we'll go from there.
It's a lawsuit that's been brought to our attention. I guess class action or group lawsuit. It's my understanding that Washington County is already involved, and it's around overcharging for insulin. You know, and it impacts our employees as far as, you know, in our healthcare plans and benefits. So I think that's why it's been at least requested or suggested that we consider also being involved. But the fact that Washington County is, it doesn't make sense that we consider being a part of the litigation.
And that is from Scott Bishop's recommendation, correct?
Yes, and Scott, you know, his approach was certainly something the board could consider and should, but he knows it's the board's decision. But receiving, you know, more information from him, he's the one that informed me that Washington County was involved as well.
Mr. Flanner?
I'll make a recommendation that we go into this litigation and sign off on it.
Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
We have
Second.
a motion, second. Discussion? Let's vote, please, Jennifer.
Is everybody logged in?
Is everybody logged in on the books?
Mr. Roll call.
Let's just do roll call if you don't care.
Mr. Holston?
Yes.
Mr. Riddle?
Yes.
Mr. Urban?
Yes.
Ms. Buchanan?
Yes.
Ms. Dellinger?
Yes.
Mr. Flainer?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Masters?
Yes. All right, thank you. Now we'll move right into our budget, and I'll turn it over to Mr. Boyd, Mr. Hale.
Sure. I'm trying to, since we may need to be referring to several documents, I'm going to try to navigate, let Elliot off the hook a little bit. Find my folder. There we go, 410 budget workshop. So in front of you is the document that we'll be referencing in our discussions tonight. What I've tried to do is, it's still small, but I have tried to blow it up as large as I can so everyone can read it, and we will pull it up on the screen. On the left and the right side, you'll notice the red numbers. Those are I just numbered the lines, so if we get to a specific funding line item, we can reference the red line, the red number that it's on, and everyone can be able to go to that. The bottom of the page has a page number, so we can even say page number 2, you know, line whatever, just to make sure everybody is looking at the same thing. But I'll pull up the document on the screen as well. Another few reminders, you know, what was asked and is the input and direction that we were given, especially around one of the largest increases in cost item was around salaries and wages. And Brad has built in, as you notice at the very top of this large document, if you look at the very top and where it begins 2024-25, FY25 column, there's an A, B, C, all the way through K. So Brad has developed the different costs based on those different levels of decisions around salaries and wages. So, and they're described at the top. Just as an example, say if you look at B, underneath, what that represents is the $2,095 flat rate increase for the required teacher salary increase. And then in this case, the other employees, the other categories of employees, B actually represents a 50-cent hourly wage increase for all classified, and then a 1% for everyone that would be considered non-certified and certified system-wide management or supervisory.
So how many people, teachers, that would receive this 2,095?
The count that I have from Brad's matrix is, I think it's about 600.
That's every.
That's everyone that is identified as a teacher. And we will be scrutinizing, I mean, there are positions that do not meet the definition of a teacher per, you know, what the state is expecting. That's gonna be what we apply. Anything out of that would fall under either the 50 cent, if it's for B, would be the increase in hourly wage, or that if it's a 1%, it would apply to their salary at 1%.
So we have 600 employees that is certified teachers that will, let's see, how am I gonna say this?
I think you want to know, I don't mean to interrupt.
Well, that's all right.
I guess his thought was that 2,095 only goes to the teachers that's making less than 50 now. That's not
No, it's
correct.
going to all.
That is not
It's
correct.
all teachers.
It's across the
Is that
board.
what,
Well, yeah, I thought we was gonna give the ones that has to make the 2,095 over the next 3 years,
No,
and the rest of them
all
would get a
that's teachers
percent.
across the board?
no, sir, we were applying $2,095 to all individuals that are classified as a teacher.
If you don't do it that way, you'll compress the bottom few years of the certified skill, and you'll be back in the same situation in some ways that we were before we changed that, where you don't get a raise for a few years as a teacher. And so now, it's 1,075 staff each year, up to year 15, then 675, I believe, after that. So if you don't keep it equal, you're gonna compress that bottom to where you won't maybe get a raise for the first 3 years you're a teacher or something, or 2 years.
I understand what you're saying.
The ones that will not get this are your certified staff, like principals, assistant principals.
Yeah.
You know, system, you know, any ones that are already on the admin pay scale that are certified, which I think there's 36, only 35 of them certified. You want to apply to any of those, because.
That's where the 1% will come in.
That's where the
Yes.
1%
If we so choose.
Whatever you do with system management will be, that it's set up for your, percentages 1 through 5.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, if we give the ones that's at 2,095, give them the one to get them up to the 50 like we're planning. Then give everybody else that's already making over 50, 2%, 3%.
It won't work like that, Keith.
So-
It won't work.
It won't.
So-
Not for the certified
I
staff.
pulled up, and first of all, it's not just 50, the minimum 50 is starting pay. In the minimum salary scale, there are other places that have a minimum amount as well. So what I put up here is this is applicable for next year. The governor's budget and the published information raises the minimum salary, starting salary for a 0-year bachelor level teacher to 44.5. That's the minimum. And from that, as you can see, there's different other benchmarks that are met. So the minimum 0-year bachelor's is 44.5, but then the minimum for 1 through 5 is plus 645, so that's 45, 145. Minimum of teachers that are in range 6 through 10, that's the base plus 3370, so it's 4780. And then, so we've got to hit all of those levels across all of the years' experience of teachers to meet the expectation that we meet the minimum salary scale of the state. What you see here is I've tried to identify where we're at right now for this fiscal year. And if we didn't do anything, our 0-year bachelors and our 1 through 5-year bachelors would be below the minimum. So we would not be meeting the minimum. And then if you come down to where they have the advanced degree section, it is the base plus 3605 for 0 through 5 for anyone that has an advanced degree. That's master's and above. It doesn't differentiate between masters and EDS and EED and PhD, whatever. It's just advanced degree. So you'll see that we, right now, our current scale, if we left it the same as this year, next year would be below the minimum. So we would not be hitting the minimum in those categories. So that's why applying it across the board, we calculated the 2,095 for each of the next 3 years, we would stay ahead of the minimum at all levels.
Have you got something that would show the two salary schedules from this year to next year, straight?
Yes, sir. Right here is
That's it.
scheduling out. So you'll see what, just as a quick geography lesson, this is current for the bachelor's lane of teachers and their years experience. I'll go all the way down to 30, which at 25, it stays the same from year 25 on. But this is our salary scale right now. Everything in white is our salary scale this year. And with the 20,000, I wish 20,000, but the $2,095, each of the next 3 years, I've carried it out to fiscal year 25, 26, 27, to get to only the minimum of 50 in 3 years. Not above it, but at 0 years experience coming into our school system. That's just meeting the minimum there. And then throughout the whole scale, it hits the minimums as we progress to FY27 as well. But these are the scales. So you can see the masters, which is by the state minimum, is really the level that they call out for advanced degrees. You can see the growth there. And again, we would hit to be at or just slightly above the minimum if we go on the path of the $2,095 each of the next 3 years.
Aren't most school systems adding a little bit increments like this? I mean, nobody's gonna try to wham it right there at the end.
Well, there may be some, and they may be in a position to do that. And then there are some districts, like our sister or neighbor district, they're already there.
Well, yeah.
And they may have, in maybe 1 or 2 of the areas, they might be right at or right below, and they can address it with less funds if they have to. But most are in the same position we are, and even more challenging than we are. They're further behind. So the next 3 years, they're going to have to really find a solution to get themselves to that minimum.
Well, I think that's the best, this is the best way to go. A little bit of it,
We made a small increment last year. We did the bare minimum based on the additional of 125 million that the governor indicated he put in last year's budget specifically to begin increasing teacher salaries. So that's where we got last year's amount of $1,250 minimum increase that we applied across all teacher positions last year.
Mr. Pointer? I'm sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just want to know if there's an increase in money this year for that in his budget.
There is, and they increased the base, and I can go over that when we talk about the different levels of, of revenue that are coming, and TSA one of them. In the governor's budget, it's expected to be passed by the end of the legislative session. He's increased the base from $6,860 to $7,075, $215. And that is specifically was intended to address or help districts, local LEAs address the salary increases.
Is this something that could be printed out before we leave today, this piece?
Yeah, everything can be printed out or shared with you, email. It's just a lot.
No, just this, especially.
Yeah, but that's, and just simply as I said, that's the white column is our existing teacher schedule, approved teacher salary schedule. And then all that is done is just add 2,095 across each of the next 3 years to see what the salary schedule would look like following that path for the next 3 budgets.
Of that $2,095, how much of it is new money that's coming from the state? And how much money would have to be need to be coming from the county?
Well, it's, just simple math, it's 70-30 split to keep it simple. So you could say 70% of $215 And, you know, that tells you the state part of that amount, but regardless of whatever it is, it's not enough money to address the increases that we proposed.
Yes.
Mr. Flainer?
I mean, as Brad has calculated and shared, what we've calculated, it's around 1.8 million to apply the 295 to all of the teacher positions. And we are, you know, based on that increase, it's about 1.2 million from the state.
When do we have to have the budget turned in by?
The cycle is just gotta be to the mayor by the 1st. That's just the rule of the commission. And they reference, they say that's how it's written in law. But regardless, May 1st is our deadline, and then we will probably not be scheduled to speak to one of the committees until later in May.
I'd like to go ahead and, I mean, if you've got more to talk about or whatever, but I'd love to pass budget I and take it to the commission.
So well, I'll be quiet because I don't know, is that?
No, I didn't make a motion.
I'll turn it over to the chair if that's a form of a motion.
No, I mean, if you've got more to go over and explain or whatever.
I think it would be good if I could. And, you know, I want to make sure that when you have this document, you know, if there's any questions about any of the categories, I want to make sure I answer all those questions.
I just was looking.
Yeah.
And with, you know, on page 2, when you go down there and you've got your, the yellow line, which is the fund balance of which is the equivalent of, you know, extra is going to come out of, it's roughly $1 million, it's $50,000 less between A and I to $30,000.
And you're looking at lines 108?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
104.
104.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, 104
It's basically
is where
between
Brad
A-
has highlighted the yellow.
Yeah, between A and it's the same thing on 108. It's $1 million difference between A and I.
Sure. I got you.
Is that the amount that you're pulling out of fund balance to budget?
On 104.
104 is?
Yes, sir. Your total budget.
Plus 105, but 105 is a carryover of the stadiums. I just
Yes.
separated it out.
Yeah.
Because we, in talking with the county, we don't think we're gonna spend any of that 4.887 this year, but it's obligated.
It's, yeah, it's more or less, that's more or less a restricted fund balance item that we will be carrying forward till we actually expend all of it, for the project. But yes, you're correct, that yellow highlighted area is what Brad's trying to highlight and pull out the amount. Yes, sir.
Well, I mean, that's the reason I just liked I, because I think it gives everybody you know, it levels the playing field for what we got. I mean, it is an extra $1 million between A and I, but that's what I like. But I want you to go ahead and explain everything that you want to before
Yeah,
I
I
make
just,
a motion in case
you know,
somebody else wants to.
so what you're saying is gonna be, I guess, one of the primary purposes of tonight, because that will enable then Brad and myself to then get rid of all these columns and say, this is the proposed budget, whatever option the board decides. Most of the other, except for the salaries and benefits, everything related to personnel, everything else is exactly the same in all versions of the budget.
Is
That's
that,
what-
I'm sorry.
No, I mean, that's what I was looking at. Everything else is the same.
Yes, sir.
It just changes between, you know, the total
Yes.
fund balances right there.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
but I want you to explain, like I said, everything.
Sure, well, I mean, all I wanted to make sure that I hit on is a couple of things. The top section on the first page, and really the first page and then some on the second, all of those items are revenue items that Brad has to, you know, that we identify every year. They're labeled, as you can see, there's local taxes, there's various types of local taxes, there's some odds and ends state revenues that come to us, and then there's the TISA funds, or the state funds. All of that's highlighted in the budget, and that's also an item that you will notice across all options A through K stay the same. as you already pinpointed, the one item in revenue that changes is the use of the fund balance across all options.
Does that include the ESSER that we used?
Well, and that's something that, you know, as we move through there, I wanna make sure I emphasize that, and there's a page I'll pull up, the changes that Brad and I made. In looking at each line item in each category, there were some funds that have been approved and exist that we realized needed to be repurposed. So we were able to address the 4 social workers within the amount available that's in this year's budget. So we carry that forward. So the increases do not include increased costs for the social workers. It's just we repurposed and were able to address the cost of the social workers and losing that ESSER revenue. So we were able to address that with the existing budget. And there's several other items as well that we were able to do that.
I need to ask a question. So, we started several years ago, like taking each piece of our budget and each like department and reconstructing their pay scales and things like that. And I think the only one we haven't touched is the coaches one. Is that?
Yeah, you know, we have, and I believe you brought that up last year around the supplements. And we have not made any changes to the amount of the supplements in this proposed budget. But, you know, that is something that will need to happen if we want to move it in a direction it should be.
I'm almost thinking that's what you said last year.
It was. We
So,
I mean, we're $11 million
I know.
in debt.
I know. I'm just-
So I realized it would be pennies because our total allocation, our total cost allocation for the supplements, the supplemental package is just a little over $400,000. So even if you increase that by 10%, I mean, that's
I know.
$450,000, which is an increase, but in a $90+ million budget, it's not that significant.
That's just.
But it is to the individuals.
It is to the individual and it is to the people that's putting in extra work with our children. So I just want to make sure that we don't lose sight of that. I know that, and I knew when this, you know, governor's plan came up, I knew that would be put on the back burner. I just want to keep it in the forefront of our minds that as soon as we get this done, something's got to be done.
Certainly.
And you're right on target, just over 450, Mr. Boyd.
Yes, sir. It does not include an increase in the supplemental package. No. Mr. Urban?
With what Chad just said, using Brad, how much fund balance will we have roughly? I know you can't put a definite to it. With us using what is that figure?
68, 62, 466.
With us using that much, if we had to end up using that much, where would we be at?
You remember last month when we did that projection, and so the 4.8 in this year really just go jump to next year.
Yeah.
So we were rough memory around 14 was the projection. So you'd take about 6 off that. You'd be down to about 8. Now what we do know, we're budgeting 20 million for sales tax. Even with the decrease, we should get more than that. So in all actuality, it won't be that low, but on paper, roughly around 8 million.
What is their comfort level on that?
I wouldn't want to go below 8. I've always said that. And our budget is actually larger now than when I used to say not below 8.
What percentage of the budget do we really need to be? I mean,
For me,
what
for me, 10%, which is 10 million. Now that's, some people may disagree with that, but that's just me.
So you feel comfortable by not dropping below 10?
Yeah, just keep in mind that when we get to 10, we're gonna have tighter budgets, you know, because we won't be able to budget big deficits like we have been. We've only got 10 million, you know.
We're gonna spend, don't know what it's gonna cost to bleachers. We're gonna go over on that. Have we ever heard any figures on that yet?
They haven't confirmed the amount. I mean, they've given us the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
So it
And we
looks to be
always-
in a range of about 400,000 right now.
Yeah, but it says here you moved 154,000.
Yes, that's
That's
the,
included in this now, right?
those are the moves we made, yes, sir.
But even the difference between A and I, A, you'd be at 9 million, just a little south of 9. And with I, you'd be just a little bit south of 8.
What would be the difference financially between H and I? That gives a 2% instead of a 3.
Well, the only thing difference is $16,000.
It wouldn't be that.
And the reason it's only that is that only affects system management. That's a very small number of
Right.
employees.
Okay,
We're
yeah,
talking
it wouldn't
probably
be
Yeah, the big
It wouldn't be
lift is the $2,095 to the teacher
that we need, yeah.
positions.
Okay.
So, I got a question. Beyond, I know we can't tell, but beyond this budget into next year, if things are similar, what are we gonna look like next year? Has nothing to do with this, it does. I just want, in forecasting the future, how would you project that for us? I mean, we've gotta have some additional revenue from somewhere, is what I see.
That's evident this year.
Yeah.
Even the step raise for next year would be over 6 million, because you're increasing it. So if you went step only, it would be 6 million, and if you use 100% of your fund balance,
Our basic would be 3.6 million next year.
no, it'd be more, it'd be over 6 million, correct?
When you look at
No.
column A, that is with no other increases except for the teacher to address the teacher salary increase.
That's 5.8 million. So next year with these raises going into effect would be, I'm just thinking 6 million, just would be another $140,000.
And that's without, going down into the expenditures and making cuts.
So then you'd be,
Reduce services and
8 million minus 6 million, you'd be at 2 million then, if you went 100% through everything. And this is my thinking, and I'm not a county commissioner, so, but I do think that at the end of the day, they're gonna add, the tax, increase taxes. And where our budget's already in there, our penny will grow, but at the same time, they can adjust the penny to where it doesn't give us any more. But, they're gonna turn around and give their employees a raise at the final hour, and they have that, they obviously have the power to do that, but that's the reason why.
So you're just talking about local taxes and your point about additional revenue. We were, kind of guided to, as Brad was putting this year's budget together, looking at revenues, I'm looking at the property tax. So we were told to utilize the same number as this year. Now, some variations happen because of, if there's a slight change in that ADA split with Johnson City, that could go up and down just a little bit naturally that way, even if it stayed exactly the same, as far as the penny rate, the value of the penny. But to your point, and then there's a reappraisal, that's where they'll decide to adjust, and they could leave the revenue exactly where it is and adjust the penny to that effect, or they could look at the value and look at it as a growth opportunity to address our need for additional revenue.
When we present this, can we go ahead and project the next couple years and growth and things, just to show where we're headed on fund balance, so they can get the big picture of where we're headed?
Yes, sir. I mean, that'd certainly be an important thing, especially to that audience. And really, I mean, the simple way right now to do it would be that column A. That's the minimum. That's the minimum without any other increases.
Right.
Assuming, again, we stay true, we're trying to maintain our level of services and staffing.
Yes. But yeah, I'd just like to see us tag that along as an addendum to the budget projected future expenses that, before we do anything different from our minimum budget.
Yes, sir.
So option A would keep everything just like it is, plus the teachers.
For the most,
Yes.
yes.
Step increases
You
and,
have,
Step increases and
and
everything we have right now.
yeah, step increases for all employees other than the certified, they would get 2,095 plus.
Correct.
Yes, it wouldn't be no increase, but it would be what I have referred to before, scheduled increases, which is the step and level, the schedule. The contract we have with our employees, basically a good faith promise that here is your salary schedule and your wage schedule, and as you move through the years working in Washington County, this is what you can expect.
In most cases, that's 1%. Most, all your classes.
In between each step, it's approximately about 1% across the board, whatever their level of wage or salary is.
Then if we want to give the raise, like Chad suggested, it costs us an extra million.
Yeah, so because of the direction last time, I did not figure classified, meaning non-teacher, non-management employees as a percent. I did two options, 50 cents or $1. So that's what that's what's figured into all these for non-management, non-teacher. It's either 50 cents or $1.
So would we be better off giving everybody $1? No.
Well, that's figured in.
That is, okay.
That's in the options,
Okay.
one of the versions.
Yeah, the last 5 columns would be $1 for non-management, non-teacher position. At the very top, that small female skill, like right below, like K, for example, right below there, you'll have 2,095 for the teachers, $1 for hourly classified, and then in that option, 5% for system management. Now, when you back up, the system management goes down 1%.
From our last meeting where Logan had his needs for the upcoming year, that has nothing, there's nothing in that what he's asked in this, is there?
Unless you wanted to utilize existing, like, dollars to purchase vehicles. I mean,
We looked at that and some of his requests, we felt like with what was in the existing currently approved line items that we prioritize and those can be addressed within the allocations that are there.
So you feel confident we can cover that?
It's just a matter, what we won't do is, and we discussed it at the district team, we're not gonna do this, come to you every month and we wanna buy 2 vans this month and 3 vans that month. We're not gonna continue with that practice.
What about this one that you prioritized? Is that one, is it included?
Is that's the ESSER?
Well, it's just got a narrative description. It's not the one that the principals all did. It's
Well, we have, again, we're gonna have to utilize existing funds. I did, work with Brad to, we started the school-based allocations this past year, and we had a fixed amount, and it ended up being $20.99 per student that goes to each school based on their enrollment. We do have in there and built into this, increasing that slightly. It's a very modest increase, which is the intent. We want to try to continue to increase that annually, but we increased it to $22. So a $22 per student for school-based allocations is reflected in this budget, in the expenditures. But that's a very small amount of dollars. To try to continue to have funds that go directly to the school to make school-based decisions.
Right.
With some of these things that they listed as their priorities.
But this is the one that says SPED summer school. It has the AMP, all of those. That's gonna be included.
That we believe we can address that within the
All right,
the
good.
allocations, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is there anything in here addressing, and I don't know if it be a line item or under other fringe benefits, the one concern that I mentioned to you of extending the reimbursement for vision for classified employees?
We did not include, that's not included, but that's, quite honestly, that's a nominal amount.
I know. How would,
It can be addressed in the budget. It's just typically those things are brought forth, as a working condition from the collaborative conferencing conversations. but we can address it.
But that wouldn't, classified doesn't have collaborative.
They do not, but the teams need to always remember they represent all employees in some cases, especially around benefits.
Because right now, every 2 years, certified employees receive $130 credit, submit your paperwork for vision eyeglasses. Now, the vision insurance program that they can purchase, but it's just a reimbursement to the schools. And that right now is only going to certified employees. And I said I'd like to have all of the employees receive that same benefit as well. And I think Brad said something like only about 50% or right now the people are taking advantage of it.
It's just not utilized by
Is it over on the
half the employees. Some don't need it, it's just not.
Right.
Many buy the offered vision,
Right.
and most of that is addressed through that plan.
The vision insurance gives you a certain allowance each year too.
Yeah, I got it with I just wanted to see them get the same amount and want to see that happen.
Thank you.
But, what has been communicated to our teams is there will be no increases in the existing line items, and priorities will have to be determined and decisions will have to be made. The priorities are to maintain level of services, maintain level of staffing, and certainly continue with the services for mental health supports through the, through our social workers, and then meet all the needs of all of our unique learners. But outside of that, it's going to have to be addressed in the existing budget line items.
Do we foresee having to add kindergarten teachers or teachers anywhere next year?
We have that. We have a projected growth for a few teacher positions again in the existing budget. And that's kind of it's a guess, but you look at trends, and so far in the last, 3 budgets, we have not added more than, 6 to 8 teachers, new teachers each year.
Right out of all these options, what do you feel most comfortable with from a numbers person? I ain't trying to put you on the spot.
I wasn't expecting that question. The thing is, the reason there's not a huge difference, at the step only, you're at 5.8, and all the way at the very end, you're at 6.8. You're only talking $1 million variance no matter what you do, and the reason for that is the certified staff salaries are set, and that's 75% of all of our salary expense is certified.
So we're only moving 25% roughly.
Yeah, for everybody else outside of that certified scale, it's only about 25% of the salary expense system. So, in the grand scheme of things, you've only got $1 million variance from the low end to the very top.
Correct.
So,
Correct.
So I don't think
That's what I was getting at, because, it's a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
it's not a whole lot of money, like Mr. Boyd said, in the scheme of things, but.
And that was my point. I hate to say it's not $1 million.
Right.
We're talking $100 million budget.
I think the other thing, when you're especially about the percentages that, I just would inject that, keep in mind, when you look at our teacher salary schedule, and then you apply the $2,095, and then you convert that, which most will, into what kind of percent increase that is. Obviously, the lower, the bachelor's and the earlier career teacher that gets $2,095 on their base salary is going to be a greater percentage increase. And when you get to the top end, the PhD 30 years or 25 years, it equates to about 2.4%. So it ranges from, what would seem to be, I guess, about a 6% to, on the lower end of the scale, trying to get that minimum beginning salary up, and then applying that $2,095 all across the scale to the highest level, which is PhD 25 plus years. That percentage is less than the front end percentage.
So that way the gap doesn't grow. If you do a percentage instead of the 2095,
Sure.
the
Correct.
gaps don't just keep growing out.
Yeah, and my point would be, So from our teacher's vantage point, you know, if you're looking at, even though it's a small number, a group of employees, so if you take the highest proposed option of 5%, I mean, I'm sure we will have people question that category got a 5% on salaries that are typically higher than theirs.
It's $16,000 every percentage, it looks like, so,
Yes.
I mean, really, it's not.
I just want to just keep that in front, because when you do flat increases, you know, it's pretty straightforward when you start doing percentages. And certainly it's calculated, and everybody calculates it, but there is a variance on the impact it has on somebody's salary.
But I think we're doing per hour and per, you know, with the teachers for the 2,095, it doesn't widen the gap between the top and the bottom. I like that a lot better than I do just a 3% or 5% or whatever. I mean, I've always said that, so.
If I understood what Mr. Boyd said, then H or I would be more across the board the same, correct?
You know, I mean, everyone, when we're talking about improving people's salaries, you know, it certainly applies to everyone. Yes, mathematically, if you look at the highest paid in the senior admin, 2 to 3% is going to be the max that would be equivalent to the others.
Well, I think you guys have done a great job putting all this together. It's very,
Well, that's
clear and concise.
That's your CFO. He does a wonderful job of reining it in and making sure it all flows the way it should.
I would, I don't know when they're ready for that, but I would tend to agree with Chad. If you look through all that, it makes sense. It's fair and equitable for everyone. Everybody's moving up. And then if you look at the bottom lines of our previous budget and then the new budget, it's about $500,000 more. So, I mean, that's nothing. That's less than a 0.5% increase. So I don't know that you could do any better than that year to year with inflation and, you know, increased costs. I just don't know how you could do much better.
And I think with I, everyone would be pretty happy.
I think
I think so.
You know, I just want to emphasize too, that realizing where we're at and where we'll be over the next several years, you know, the priorities were to make the improvements in the salaries and wages that we believe we can and that we have to, address some of the fixed costs that we just the cost of doing business and inflation, but areas, you know, we wanted to prevent a decline in services and staffing.
Absolutely.
So that's, in looking at it, we believe that we can do that. It's just we will not be advancing in the way that we want to.
Well, until we
We'll be
find
able
out
to sustain.
how much is gonna change,
Right.
you know, in the property tax, if it does change this year, you know, this sets us up, you know, pretty good right now, but it also, you know, hopefully next year, be able to add some things maybe, but we know where we're staying too.
I agree, you know, and Mr. Riddle's comment about we gotta, at least, especially when engaging the commission, we've got to show the next few years, because, you know, this year they're gonna do this reappraisal and reset, and certainly don't wanna be in a position where we have to go to them next year and say, you did this reset, and we know that we were gonna have increased costs, and we need another request to consider raising property
I think
tax.
it's just always good to put what our needs are on the spotlight, because the sheriff's department and everybody else is gonna do the same thing, so,
Yeah.
you know, we just need to show and just like you just said, we're maintaining, we're not advancing by this budget, but, you know, we're maintaining the services we have, and we're also not even letting any employees go, so that's a huge deal, but also too, and I know they wanna see us advancing too, and moving forward, so.
So, you know, just a statement about our teachers, our principals, our staff, regardless of the status of the budget, and it may be status quo in a lot of the categories, but, you know, they're gonna work hard and we're gonna advance.
Oh, yeah.
It just
No,
makes
no, I-
it makes it very difficult. I'm glad, and it looks, you know, our priorities are to ensure that we sustain and maintain, and also where we have to and where we can, we improve salaries and wages of our employees.
Ready to make a motion?
Brad, are you comfortable with I?
Yes, yeah, I think so. Just for your knowledge, you might dislike this, the $1 that you're going to classify for the entry pay, like Logan Clean Health, that's a little over 7.5%. So if you want to correlate that
Right.
dollar, that's not 7.5 for everybody,
For
if you
everybody.
make more.
Right.
But the very entry level pay, it's roughly 7.5.
And I think that was your biggest thing here in the last couple of years on the bottom side.
Well,
And I do believe, I mean, you know, until it's done, we won't know, but in attending other committee meetings, the county's meetings, you know, they have made comments that that's about the area that a lot of the departments are looking to propose as far as the wage earners, $1 an hour. Well, you probably have heard that.
With inflation the way it is, you have to. You have to give your employees a living wage.
absolutely.
Well, when you break that down, a typical employee, full-time, 40 hours a week demands $40 a week.
A little bit of gas.
And yeah, I mean, you know, that might be 2/3 of the tank of gas.
Yeah, well, it's not full tank.
Depends on what they drive
That's true.
and what fuel they use.
Would you-
Propane, that's it, unless it's propane.
It's,
That's not what I was saying. My wife's car requires a higher premium fuel than my vehicle, so I get the cheaper fuel.
Mr. Plater.
Would you be comfortable with I and putting a 5% raise on the coaching stipends, which would be be 22,500?
Again, I think it'd be nominal, just, you know, if you just do a quick calculation with the 450 and 5%, I mean, that's just another 25,000 in that line item. And then that would equate to, in some cases, our lowest supplement is less than 1,000. So, I mean, that's just.
Well, most of them are gonna
$5.
be getting or a lot of them are teachers, so they're gonna be
They'll get that
getting.
Well, well, if the stipend is structured in a way that it includes their monthly salary, not every stipend is.
Right.
Some is just a flat amount.
The ones that is included, is that just head coaches?
Generally, yes.
Okay.
That additional month based on their monthly, 10-month monthly pay, and it adds that 11th month. Plus then they get that smaller stipend. flat
So the
amount.
assistants will get the extra 5 on top of what
Yeah,
they're.
what I'm gonna do is if you all say 5%
We
outside
can
of that
incorporate
extra
that
line,
into the final.
is we would just take the existing coaching stipends, up every one of them by 5%, and I believe it's in policy, so we would need to update the policy to
Yeah.
match that.
Yeah.
But that would be anything outside of that extra month pay that the head coaches get, because they're gonna go up anyway.
Actually, we pulled out a policy, and the policy now says that the board will approve annually the stipend schedule, the supplement schedule.
That's athletics only.
And so you will actually, like you do the salary scales, you actually will approve next year's salary scales, and then you will approve next year's supplemental package too.
I mean, this way we don't have to make a budget amendment.
Right.
But they're already
We
being in there.
incorporate that increase into the budget. But, you know, to Ms. Buchanan's point, I agree with her. The structure of our supplement package requires some attention.
And maybe next year we can do something else, you know, once we find out
Do another
our
5.
funding, you know, source comes in, but, I mean,
Well, we just took off out of the gate and did a really good job, and then we just came to a screeching halt because of this, and I just
right out
shouldn't be
of money.
overlooked because, you know, we had another challenge.
And Mike, let me add to what you said. You said athletics only. It's all intertwined, like for
Yeah.
example, there's
All
band supplements.
So it's anybody gets a stipend,
You know, it's
I guess.
everything on that supplement.
In that
sheet.
supplement package.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, so what you would do is if you approve I here, we'll just add that approximately 25,000, so the numbers will change roughly $25,000 if you say do that.
Okay.
So all the supplements would increase 5%?
Everything in that supplemental
Yes.
package.
Mr. Flamer?
I make a motion that we go with budget draft I, and also on top of that, 5% for the supplements, stipends of $25,000 for budget purposes.
We have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
Discussion.
I want everybody to realize that when I first went on the board, our budget was about 48 million. And now it's 100. And I had, let's see, about $4 million in fund balance. And then we got, every time we had to do a teacher's raise and stuff, we had to go to the commission and they'd tell us no. And grant you, the governor has put more money into schools. But I just don't want to get ourselves broke. Okay? That's what scares me.
Well, that's one reason why I asked Brad.
Well, I mean, I
think Brad watches over our money very well.
yeah, but if you get down here $7-8 million, and we like to spend money. I've sat here and watched everybody, we do this, yeah, we'll do it, let's Brad pay for it, come out fund balance.
I think the key mindset to have is going forward, unless it's an emergency, stick with your budget. Unless it's a real,
Something.
just having that mindset.
We've had an inordinate amount of funds, where we
Yeah,
had
but it's
COVID.
gone.
Right, that's gone.
That's
So
what's hurt, that's what scares me.
That's why we're switching gears, where we would have said yes before, and we had the ability and funding to do it, and have done a lot of good with the money. Now, we're gonna have to look really close, and again, make sure it's within budget. So some of that is obviously gonna slow down, so we'll be saying some no's. And that's just the way it is, because we don't have the funding to support all the yeses anymore.
And I feel like a lot of that money, it had to be spent by a deadline, so we had to figure out what was the best way to spend those things.
Well, I'm just worried, okay? I'm just worried, so.
And I think with the money we've been given, with our extra money that's been allotted to us, we've really diligently spent it intentional to make things better.
I agree.
Oh, I agree. We've done well but I just,
We needed, our system needed a lot of revamps and upgrades and things, and I think this
and we've spent
body has
a
done
lot
a very good job doing that.
Yeah, intentional spending has
Prioritizing.
really,
I think it's been
and
very good.
prioritizing what needed to be done with the
But
extra
there's-
money and
There's
things like
always
that.
more out there that has to be done.
There is.
But
They are.
if you look at this, like I said before, 0.5% in $100 million budget, just increasing is nothing. I think again,
Well,
that's
it's more
being
money
a
than I
good
got.
steward of your money. $500,000 is, like I say, it's half a percent of this budget that was going up year over year. So that, in my estimate, as running from a business standpoint, that you don't get much better than that. That's just good business right there.
Well, I mean, there 2022 and 23, 86 million. And then 2023, 24, it's jumped to 100 million.
It's because
So-
we done the,
Most of that
We done it.
salaries.
Well, I understand that, yeah.
and that's what, I mean, you
And
gotta
that
best
got-
in your
that, basically, the salaries was, ESSER money? Not ESSER money, but what was it?
Fund balance, we use fund balance to get raises.
But we got more money
From our
from the
taxes.
state.
Well, we did get an increase in revenue
From the
based
state.
on the implementation of the TISA
Yeah,
funding.
decent.
Um,
Alright,
And that was a big bump, but it didn't cover all of the expenditure. And honestly, unless there's a change from the state level, it's not going to cover all.
that's
the
why,
areas.
that's what worries me, that we're gonna be out of money, and we're gonna be asking the commission for money, and I'm afraid that we won't get it.
I mean, we're gonna add new programs and stuff like that, we're investing in our people
Well,
with this proposal and this, motion.
Yeah, and really,
It's-
we're just
That's all we're
sustaining
doing. I
what we
mean, we're-
have.
Before we stepped up,
Well, we
with the
took our
money-
fund balance to do that and replaced that money with the TISA money that we got.
but before we stepped up and increased our salaries and things, we were dying on the vine.
I know.
We were losing people, we were losing the highly qualified, multi-year teachers, losing our hourly staff. We could not hire people, so we had to do something major, and that's why you've got an increase in that line to get on today's standards. And we're just kind of barely on the standards for today's.
So we're not going above and beyond.
No,
Yeah,
we're
'cause
getting people up to where we should have been, because there were years and years that didn't happen. So we had to make a big move to get towards that goal, and that's why you have that increase. You don't go backwards. I mean, we're gonna have to move forwards, and I
Well,
think this is a reasonable plan to
You're
do
not,
so.
I agree with everything you just said, but I'm just saying, we had another more funding coming in than what we do today. And I'd like to see our commission either give that back to us, or in the pennies, give us more pennies or something to get us, because we're the ones that done it. They didn't do it, we done it. This board sat here and said, we're gonna put money in our teachers and raise our teachers' salary. The commission didn't do it. So, that's what I'm worried about. I just want us to be sound.
I mean, I think moving forward in the final version, and we get that prepared, and ultimately if that version is approved by the board and sent to the mayor, I mean, the communication and engagement with the commission is not just about this year. It's the fact that, the additional funding is necessary. And they have to consider that, and especially the year when there's a reappraisal. All of us have seen, and I realize as a taxpayer, certainly that's what you certainly expect them to look at it very closely and scrutinize it very closely. But we've all seen where there have been decisions made not to do incremental increases, or do an increase when there is an adjustment like a reappraisal. And then it gets put off and the can gets kicked down the road, and then there's a huge increase. And nobody likes an increase, period, but when it's kicked, can is kicked, I'm not talking about this commission. It's an example that's been available many times over the years in different communities. So it's not an easy decision on our elected officials, I know, but we have a clear need that we have to increase our revenue, and the fact that we don't have the ability, because of now the structure of the rural local option sales tax, where it was 100% going to education, now it's only 50%, and where it was growing, where the board had a lot of strong, growth opportunities to really utilize that additional funds, or those growth funds. We don't have that anymore, so we have to have help from the county commission. And the state has made some great improvements. This governor and the previous governor and even the previous governor, our state has invested a lot in education, more so probably in the last 20 years than they had previous. But again, the state increases are not enough to address all the needs at our level or any local level. That's where we have to have a good partnership and help from our local government.
Okay, any more discussion?
I would like to point out something.
Yes, sir.
Overall numbers that Keith mentioned, just to get a full picture where the budget is $100 million for FY24. There's about $6.5 million of that's not recurring. The approximately $5 million for the stadiums, $1.15 million for the Jonesboro furniture for the new school, and we put $475 in there to purchase the house in Gray. So I'm glad you're looking at that, but about $6.5 million of that was not recurring. Of that $100 million from last year. The 4.887 for the stadium carried over to this year, so the approximately $100 million we have next year, all things being equal, that'll fall out. So that's just something to consider. But I'm glad you're looking at that overall.
Well, I mean, that 86 million had that full 9 million added in too, that we used our fund balance to balance our budget last year. And we're probably, probably not gonna use but 4 or 5 million of it, 4 million roughly, to finish out the year.
We'll certainly see, we know that approximately 5 million is probably not gonna happen.
Because of the timing.
Because of the timing. It's already obligated, we can't touch it, but it'll still be in the bank account come
Yeah.
June the 30th, you know? So it'll make our fund balance look $5 million more than it really is.
But we're fixing to use 6 million of it, turn right around and use 6.5 million to balance the budget again.
Am I correct in saying that this budget has nothing to do with the additional monies that we need to improve the safety features in the building and the additions on the school? That's a separate entity.
Correct.
That's through the educational capital funds. That's another comment that will be brought, of course, to the board, and we have to take to the commission to update and approve 5-year educational capital fund plan. But that is a different source of money.
Any more discussion?
Well, this ain't to do with the budget, but have they said about what they gonna increase that?
They haven't said anything about it.
Okay.
I'm sure a lot of that, as like this budget, will be in response to what we propose and the back and forth that happens there. But, you know, again, if they adjust the penny based on the value, they'll have to look at every fund like that to decide if it increases the overall total, or or they leave it the same, or they decrease it. We certainly hope they don't decrease it.
Yeah. Well, that's what.
Can I call for a question?
Okay. All right, let's do a roll call vote, Jennifer, please. And we're voting on aye on our budget,
And
including the
5%.
5%.
Approximately. Mr. Huddleston,
Yes?
Mr. Riddle,
Yes.
Mr. Irvin,
Uh,
Ms. Buchanan,
Yes.
Ms. Dillinger,
Yes.
Mr. Fleener,
yes, ma'am.
Mr. Hammond,
Yes.
Mr. Masters.
Yes,
All approved.
thank you. Okay, only other thing I want to remind, our top 10 banquet is the 16th, which we will not meet here again until that. So 16th at the Millennium Center at 7, and then our workshop is the 23rd back here. Other than that, meeting adjourned.